Hey y'all, my name is Kayla and welcome to my cozy chaotic corner of the internet. So in today's video, we are going to be doing a tier ranking of the first 20 books that I have read in 2024. If you're new to the channel, I only rate books in full star, whole star ratings. I don't give half ratings, I don't give quarter ratings, I just give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I understand that when you're rating books, sometimes there's nuance and there's reasons that might make something like a high 5 versus like a low 5. So I thought that using a tier system could be a little fun, expanding the ratings a little further than just a 4-star or a 2-star, So with that noted, I am going to be again doing the first 20 books that I have read this year, and then I think just following up every few months with another tier ranking list of the next 20 books. Let's just kick things off with my first tier is 1,000 Times Yes. If you know, that's from Pride and Prejudice, and everyone and their mother has utilized that 1,000 times over at this point. And then tier 2 is I'm Just Ken, because
anywhere else I'd be taken. Is it my destiny to live and die a life of blood fragility?
Next we have Thoroughly Enjoyed. I really, flexed that creative muscle to make that one up. It was a book that was read. The next is You Wrote a Book. Next is Do Better. And then finally we have Torture. And then I do have a DNF tier just because if you guys watch my monthly wrap-ups, you know that for the most part I do rank the books that I DNF, but I figure for the tier ranking purposes, we can just make note that the book was DNF'd. So if you want to ever know what the ranking is for a book that was DNF'd is, you can just go back and check out my monthly wrap-ups to see what books were DNF'd and what ranks I give them. And just to, make life a little easier, I always talk about the books I DNF first before getting into the books I actually fully read. We are going to start with Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I initially gave this book a 4-star rating. For the most part, I really enjoyed this book until I would say the last third, which is why I give it a 4-star. But to be quite frank, if we're thinking a little heavier on this, I would put this in, it was a book that I read. The first 2/3 of the book, I really enjoyed. I had such a good time with this book. It just, I don't even know how to put it in words. I thought the smutty scenes were a little much. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good smut scene, but the context of what was going on, if you've read the book, it was just ridiculous and over the top. And then after that, I feel with so many romance books, there was the 3rd act breakup, but it was the dumbest. It was, I just didn't like how things kind of happened in the 3rd act. And then I also I don't quite remember how the book ended. Okay, next we have Cave of Bones, which is actually the first book that I DNF'd this year. So, yay. Next we have the Ceres Celestial Legend series, volumes 1 through 3. I started volume 4 and I just haven't gotten back to it yet. Quite frankly, all of these were rated 5 stars, and I think I just rate them 5 stars because these are just nostalgia buckets for me. I was obsessed with manga growing up. I loved reading it, and Ceres was one of the mangas that I read in its entirety when I was a teenager. So for me, it's not necessarily I'm reading it for the context or the storyline or anything like that. I'm just reading it for nostalgia's sake. And I would say it actually has a pretty interesting storyline, and it's actually quite interesting to read the manga and then also watch the anime to see what's been changed between the two for media formats. So that's always fun. But sorry, back to the tier ranking. I would say for these guys, I'm just gonna put them in Thoroughly Enjoyed. They're still 5 stars because again, nostalgia, it does something to you. but I wouldn't say they're like the best manga I've ever read in my entire life. They're just like an interesting story with some cheesy, funny manga moments. Okay, next we have Johannes Cabal, the Necromancer. And I actually really love this book. Okay, so I originally gave this a 4-star. I would agree with that. I think there were just like a few bits where I was like, we could speed this up a little bit, but I wouldn't say that I disliked the book. In fact, I think I'm still going to rank this fairly high. I think I will give this I'm Just Ken, because again, for the most part, I really enjoyed this book. It was so much fun. It was so quirky. I've never really read a book quite like Johannes Cabal. Very much dark humor. And if it wasn't supposed to be dark humor, that's how I read it. So I don't know what that says about me. Still, a really great book. I'm Just Ken. Anywhere else, he'd be a 10. We have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. So this book I did originally give 5 stars. Emily Wilde's is gonna be I'm Just Ken. I'm Just Ken. Yeah. We're gonna put her in I'm Just Ken. Next we have How to Murder Your Employer. This was a really fun book to read. It was the first book I read, and I will note I initially give it 4 stars, and I think that's still a valid rating for it. The reason I gave it 4 stars versus 5 stars is mostly because there were just some plot points where I was like, kind of boring. The book ultimately, I believe, broke off into 3. So like the first half of the book, you're pretty much from one POV, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember the character's name. We have our main male character. He's like the main dude throughout the entire book. But then halfway through, they all leave the school where they learn to murder people. And then it breaks off into 3 different plot points. And that was the part where I was like, ooh, I don't necessarily love that, because we spent so much time with this main character and then we split off into 3 other groups. And at first, one of the point of views I just wasn't interested in at all. However, I will note that actually ended up being like probably one of my favorite towards the end, but it took me a while to enjoy that. So with that, I think I'm gonna actually put How to Murder Your Employer under the thoroughly enjoyed category. Next, we have Godkiller, which everyone knows by now. I literally rant and rave about this book every single episode. I did give it a 5-star, but honestly, I don't know if I could give it 1,000 times yes. Okay, y'all, sorry, my internet went out. Before my internet decided to go out, we left off with Godkiller. So I was humming and hawing over what I wanted to rate Godkiller. And I think ultimately I am going to give it 1,000 times yes. I feel like the hesitation I have at giving it 1,000 times yes versus I'm Just Ken is simply because Sunbringer has literally been sitting on my shelf now since February, and it's now August. So part of me is like, well, do I really like it that much if I'm not reading Sunbringer? And yes, because the reason I'm not reading Sunbringer yet is because I'm worried that Godkiller was so good that Sunbringer is going to be a letdown, because so far every series I have read, nothing seems to compare to the first book. So I'm just having like second book blues or something like that. That has to be occurring currently. But next we have Medusa. I don't think I've ever actually talked about Medusa on this channel, because I read it so early in the year before I was really like talking about books on YouTube. I originally gave Medusa 3 stars, and I think that is honestly where it sits, is you wrote a book. Next we have The Wallflower. The Wallflower falls into the same kind of nostalgia category that Ceres Celestial Legend fell in. I did give actually this one 4-star versus 5-star because it's still fun, it's still enjoyable. Wallflower, just based off of the first volume, it was a book that I read. And it's just nostalgic. I would rate it higher just for nostalgia purposes, but like really thinking on the book itself, like it was a book that I read. Okay, next we have The Last Ranger, which I actually rated 2 stars. And I think I'm gonna keep it low. This was a type of book that I just felt like never really had like a good peak. Like it had never had like a climax. It was just kind of like these little rolling hills of storyline. And yeah, it just didn't do it for me. Now, it may not have done it for me, but someone else may think it's 1,000 times yes. But for me, it's do better. Do better. So next we have What Moves the Dead by T. King Fisher. This I originally rated 4 stars. I thought the storyline as a whole was really fun and really great. So yeah, this one I thoroughly enjoyed. Next, we have Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. This is one of those books that are just like standard to read in American elementary schools. At least it was back in the 90s. But actually rereading it, I cried so much reading this book. And I think it's because like reading this book now, I actually have an understanding to what was actually going on during this story. Whereas as a kid when I was reading this, I was just like, oh, wow, the Holocaust was bad. But like as an adult, realizing just how bad the Holocaust was, this was actually a really emotional book to read. Because it is a middle grade book, it's pretty quick to read. But I was actually really surprised at how emotional it got and how much it really delved into the trials and tribulations of the people who lived throughout the Holocaust in Europe. So really great book. I'm going to give it 1,000 times yes. I think even as an adult, it doesn't hurt to read it. We have Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Volume 1. This is a nostalgia one, but the funny thing is I've never read the Sailor Moon series. I've read all the various comic books, I've watched the movies, I've watched the TV series, so I have a lot of context behind Sailor Moon, but I've never actually read the manga. So it's just kind of fun to read the manga and also then compare it to my memory of the TV series. So this is going to be thoroughly enjoyed. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Next we have Maude Horton's Glorious Revenge. This was actually a really fun book, but I will say kind of like the first half of it, I was dragging my feet through the first half. And then the second half, woo, it picks up. So just because the first half, like this easily could have been a book I DNF'd, but I pushed myself through and then I got the satisfying ending. So because of that, I think this is actually going to fall in, it was a book that I read. Like again, the ending, amazing. But it just took so long to get to like the fun part of the book that I can't, in good conscience, rate it higher. The Hawthorne Legacy, which is the second book in the Inheritance Game series. And this I rated 3 stars. The Inheritance Games I rated 5 stars. I thought it was so fun. It was also the first and probably I think one of the only books I read last year in 2023. That was so good. It's such a good book, such a fun book. And the Hawthorne Legacy was almost kind of like a rinse and repeat of that in a sense, but not as like fun. So 3 stars, and I think we're putting it in the middle ground of middle to lower ground of you wrote a book. It was just kind of like, it was just a book that I read, but it wasn't like, I can't in good faith put it up with these books where I really enjoyed like the first half or 2/3 of Butcher and Blackbird, and I really enjoyed the end of Maude Horton's Glorious Revenge and Hawthorne Legacy. I was just like, I finished it? You know? The Tenant by Katrine Engberg. I actually rated this book 3 stars. And I think it is 3 stars, but if you're looking at it in comparison to all the other books I've read, it could do better. It could do better. I don't know, I just didn't really like it as much as other mysteries that I've read. But yeah, we're gonna drop it and do better. Next, we have Recursion by Blake Crouch. I gave this one 5 stars. It was so good. I loved the pacing of it. I listened mostly to this I did listen to this completely on audiobook. The audiobook was so much fun. 1,000 times yes. I would gladly listen to that again. And I think actually what I would love to do is do a read along where I listen to the audiobook and actually read along with the physical book as well. That was just, it's so fun. It makes me want to read more sci-fi. So if you guys have any good science fiction, drop in the comments down below, because that was a fun book to read. Next we have The Woman in Cabin 10. I originally gave this 5 stars. The more I think about this book, I think I would actually give it a 4-star, and I think I would put this in thoroughly enjoyed. It had some interesting plot twists. The one thing I didn't necessarily love is it had a unreliable narrator, which isn't, I typically love like morally gray characters. I love unreliable narrators, but I just feel like she could have been written better. Especially, I just recently read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and I really loved how that main character, the narrator, was written. So comparing The Woman in Cabin 10 to In My Dreams I Hold a Knife in the sense of having an unreliable narrator, I feel like In My Dreams I Hold a Knife did it just so much better than The Woman in Cabin 10. But still a fun book. I still enjoyed it. And finally, we have Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. And y'all, I originally gave this 3 stars. But the more I think about the book, the more I really didn't like it, which is so sad. I love Pride and Prejudice, and I really enjoyed Mansfield Park, but Northanger Abbey, I don't know. I didn't like any of the male interest in the book. I didn't like our main female lead. She was just kind of annoying and aloof. So this is my tier ranking, and again, let me know if you guys have any recommendations on what I should name these different tiers. I will definitely be sticking with, I'm just kind of like, you cannot change my mind on that, but all the other ones, I am willing to adjust accordingly. But yeah, let me know if you guys like this video in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are not already subscribed, and I will see y'all in the next one.